The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. Welcome to today's University-Based Child and Family Policy Consortium webinar. My name is Patricia Barton, and I'm the Consortium Coordinator. We're excited to welcome you to today's webinar, Coding as a Developmental Playground, Computational Thinking and Robotics in Early Childhood. Before I turn things over to our speaker, I want to say a few words about the consortium and about using GoToWebinar. The University-Based Child and Family Policy Consortium is a network of more than 25 university-based institutions, including centers, schools, departments, and programs that have an interest in child and family policy. We are organized around three main purposes. First, to share the latest findings and strategies for conducting policy-relevant research and to facilitate collaboration across our member institutions. Second, to encourage cross-disciplinary undergraduate and graduate training to support the next generation of child and family policy researchers. And third, to foster effective translation between research, practice, and policy audiences. The consortium is run in collaboration with the Society for Research and Child Development and hosts a number of webinars each year on a variety of topics. If you're interested in learning more about the consortium, having your institution join the consortium, or if you would like to join our listserv, please see the information on this slide. Just a quick word before we begin about the technology we are using today. We are using GoToWebinar to host this webinar. All of the attendees are muted. If you have questions for our speaker, please use the question box on your screen to submit them. Today's webinar is being recorded. After it ends, I will be uploading it to SRCD's YouTube channel and will share that link with all registrants. Please feel free to share the link widely. And now I'd like to turn things over to our speaker to introduce herself as well as today's topic.
So hello, everyone. So I am Marina Umaschi Bers, and I'm a professor in the Department of Child Study and Human Development at Tufts University, and I also have another appointment in computer science at Tufts University. And I'm also the director of a DevTech research group. And you might hear an accent. You don't see me, but you might hear the accent. And I'm actually from Argentina, and I came to the US many, many years ago, almost 24 years ago, to do my PhD at the MIT Media Lab with Seymour Papert, which is one of the really creators of the field of technology and learning. So going to that, so let's start with having you think for a little bit. So we can see here lots of pictures of different objects. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a couple of seconds to think which of these objects you think doesn't belong to the screen. Is it the umbrella that lights up when it feels the rain? Is it the laptop? Is it the water faucet? Which one of it? Well, so the answer is this one. The one that doesn't belong to this group is this little toy here. This is a puppet, and there are no electronics inside. So it's just hands-on. All the rest of these objects have been designed and built and programmed by some form of engineer or computer scientist. So I start with this to show you how pervasive is this notion. A lot of people usually say, well, the water faucet doesn't belong, but that's not true because the water faucet has sensors. So what we really hope is that kids who are growing up in this 21st century, surrounded by all kinds of objects, will not doubt and will immediately recognize which objects have not been engineered and do not have a program inside. And so this idea of objects that have been engineered and have been programmed dates back to the 60s. So this is Seymour Papert, who was my mentor and my advisor at MIT. And back in 1967, he was already talking about robotics for education. And I don't know how many of you have heard of Logo, the programming language that was like that on the screen. And so you could program a little turtle to go forward, to turn right, and you could learn at the same time you were learning programming, you were learning about math and other concepts. So those ideas started not on the screen, but on tangible physical objects. And of course, it's not the object on the screen or the object on the robot. It's really what's important is the ideas behind the technology. And so Seymour wrote all of these ideas in his book, Mindstorms. And then Mindstorms gave birth to the first robotic systems that Lego launched and made it very, very popular, which was Lego Mindstorms. And I happened to start at the Media Lab at the time. They were working on research on these Lego Mindstorms. And it's called Lego Mindstorms because of the book of Seymour. So what we hear from here is that back in '67, there were already people that were very extensively thinking and talking about introducing computer science and programming and robotics into schools. However, then there was a silence for a few years, few decades actually. And in the last 5 to 10 years, we start hearing again code.org and bringing computer science into all educational levels, and different countries have different policies. And so now the buzz is again, so why? Why this is happening? It's nothing new, right? Back in the 60s, people were already talking and doing research projects. So the main difference is this. So there's a growth in needs of computer scientists and engineers. And this growth keeps going up and up and now. So of course there's a push for the workforce to start educating people. Well, that's wonderful, that's great, but that's not why I work on this field. That's not what passionates me. So if we know we want to bring computer science, we need to start when the kids are young, right? But if we're going to do it when the kids are young, how young should they be? So if we think of learning how to program as a literacy, we probably do it at the time where kids are learning how to read and write and do math and engage in all forms of literacy. And that's in early childhood. This is a time where they're open, they are less likely to engage in stereotypes. And also from an economical perspective, we know from work done by economists, and this is work by Jim Heckman, Nobel laureate, that programs that are targeted to the earliest years and preschool programs have a higher return on the investment. So those are all reasons for why we want to start early. But how? How do we start early? You know, we're not going to expose young children to programming in C or in Java or sit in front of a computer for a long time. So that question is what led my DevTech research group at Tufts University. We're constantly asking, what is a developmentally appropriate way to bring computer science and programming and engineering to very young kids? And so I'm going to share with you our two main answers to that question. The first one is we understand coding as a literacy. So we don't understand coding as associated with math, which is traditionally when computer science gets into schools, it gets associated with math and science. For us, when we work in early childhood, we associate coding as a literacy. And I'll go, you know, the second part of the talk, I'll focus on that. And the second one is coding as a playground. So we understand coding as a developmental activity that engages children in personal, social, emotional, moral, physical, motor, you call it, all domains of development, the same way that we see them played out in the playground, could happen and should happen when children are engaging in coding. So throughout the talk, I will focus on these two, coding as literacy and coding as playground, and I will show you examples with videos of how we do that. And I will also show you the two examples of technologies that we have developed in my lab. One is Scratch Junior, which is a programming app that's free for young children 4 to 7, and it's a collaboration with Mitch Resnick at the Media Lab. And there is Kibo, which is a robot that you can program without screens using wooden blocks. So I'll focus on those two technologies as examples of how coding can be taught as a literacy and as a playground. So let's start with coding as a literacy. What do we mean by a literacy? What is a literacy of the 21st century? Well, a literacy is the ability to use a symbol system and a technological tool to comprehend and express ideas. So the symbol system can be a natural language, English, Spanish, French, Chinese, or it could be an artificial language, such as a programming language. And a technological tool, I could be using a pencil or a pen or a computer, right? And the goal here is to comprehend and express ideas so I can communicate with others. And what's important about literacy is that it changes the way we think and also ensures civic participation. Those who don't know how to read and write are not able to have a say in how society is run. So if coding is a literacy, Now we have today tons of examples. If we look at what's going on with algorithms and with Facebook, and you open the newspaper, and there's tons of examples of how algorithms are used to change our civic participation. And so those of us who do not understand what an algorithm is, we're going to be in a less advantaged place to understand, what's going on in the world. So if we look at it historically, so we know that in the oral times, right, and I'm going to make a little story here. The oral times in Greece, there was a storyteller, and he would come to the big plaza and tell their stories. These stories tended to be linear and cyclical and repetitive, and they had big characters, and they were epics because people needed to remember them. They were not written. So whenever the storyteller left, the story disappeared with that storyteller. And then, of course, it got changed by whoever listened the story. Of course, all of this changed with the scribes. The scribes suddenly were able to put in writing some of the things, and what they chose to put into writing wasn't necessarily the stories, but the list of things and land and who owned what. And so the idea of writing came very quickly associated with an economic development. And those who had the power to write had the power to make decisions in society. The printing press democratized all of that. Suddenly everyone could, share their ideas, write their ideas, read their ideas. So the question is right now, what's going to happen with coding? Is coding continuing that trend? How is it democratizing society? How is it having an impact on civic society? So open question. And next time you open the newspaper, think about that. So coding promotes an abstract, logical thinking and engages children in problem solving, engages everyone in problem solving. And then in our field, there's a term that we use to describe this kind of thinking, and it's called computational thinking. There is debate about what the term exactly means, but we can all agree that it has to do with thinking like a computer, thinking in abstract, logical ways and being able to solve problems when they arise. We know they're going to arise. So this is a skill that's useful for everyone, the same way that literacy is useful for everyone. So we don't expect the philosophers or the writers or the journalists to be the only one that write. Writing is useful if I need to go to the supermarket, I need to make a list of writing a love poem or a grant or a song, for anything. So the same way we conceptualize coding. Coding as a skill useful for everyone, not just for the nerd working on developing a piece of software. And of course, the idea here is that we can use, if it's going to be for everyone, everyone is going to use it to express him or herself in very different ways. And at the end of the day, like a literacy, coding's goal is to express ideas, to communicate. And problem solving is something that we do on our way to communicate and to express. That is understanding coding as a literacy. And of course, we need tools. The same way that we need tools to write, we have tools on computer languages for programming. Of course, all of those, Java, Python, Pascal, you name it, they're designed for older people. If we're going to have a 4 or 5-year-old trying to learn one of those, it's not going to work. So in my DevTech research group here at Tufts University, what we do is work on projects to research what kinds of tools we can design and we can develop and we can deploy out into the world that will allow children to engage in computational thinking, in coding as a literacy, in coding as a playground. And so over the years, we have developed through National Science Foundation, several grants. We have developed Scratch Junior, which is a free app, and this is a collaboration with Mitch Resnick and the Media Lab, and Kibo, which is a robot that you can program with wooden blocks. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to talk through both of those, and I'm going to give you examples of how this is used in classrooms and in different countries and different settings. So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Scratch Junior, so I'm going to play a little bit of a video so you can get a sense how a 5-year-old who doesn't know how to read or write might still be able to program. All of these videos are available on my website, and the links will be circulated later on. So we open the free app, and we can create the project. So we choose a scene. We can use an already existing background or draw our own background or take a picture of something we like. So I'm going to take a picture of a plant. And now I'm going to place a character. And I can choose a drag from already existing library. I'm going to choose my frog. And now I'm going to program my frog. So when it's the green flag, my frog is going to hop twice. It's going to grow twice. It's going to shrink twice. And I can record my own sound. And I can play that sound. And now I can have all of this sequence repeated 4 times. And then I can end. So now I put the green flag and my frog is following the sequence of actions. I can go and create new pages, so I can write a story. I can use a grid if I want to do some math. And of course, I can use text. So that is the basic of how we program with Scratch Junior. There is logic, there's order, there's a sequence. And that is an algorithm. So for those of you who might have heard of Scratch, Scratch is a very, very popular programming language designed for children 8 and up at MIT. If I want to make a frog jump, this is the program. But in Scratch Junior, if I want to make my frog jump, this is the program. So we spent in my lab 4 years trying to do research on how to go from a complex set of commands to very simple set of commands, but that will still give a lot of creativity and a lot of open-endedness to children's creativity. So let me show you some of that creativity. These are 4 and 5-year-old kids using Scratch Junior.
Whoa! I'm gonna do a race with 4 turners. Ready?
Low orange block. They go very slow.
Turn, go. Let's go.
So this kid created a race for his characters.
Look at my movie. Who wants to see my movie? Hey, this time is more cool. My movie started now. Visible? Invisible.
So she created a movie of a cat that appears and disappears, and actually this video continues, and it goes on and on and on and on with the image of appearing and disappearing, appearing and disappearing. And so then the girl later learned that she could use the repeat command and make such a long sequence shorter. So what happened with Scratch Junior? So Scratch Junior is we actually launched in 2014. And since 2014, we have 9.5 million downloads all over the world. But in January 2016, we started collecting user analytics. And what we learned through those user analytics is in this 2-year period between 2016 and 2018, we have 22 million projects created by children. We also established a partnership with PBS, and we created a PBS Kids Scratch Junior that has more than 1 million downloads. And it has the same programming functionalities, but it has the characters from PBS. So children can be programming their own favorite characters and create stories. And then it's used all over the world except Western Sahara and North Korea, but every other single country in the world is using it. That's very exciting. And it's registered in over 2,000 languages all over the world. These are the top 10 countries who are using it if you are interested. There's an interesting relationship between these countries that have the higher users of Scratch Junior and countries that have policies in place of incorporating the teacher of computer science in education. Here's a sense of the world and what's happening and the percentages. So North America, Europe, Asia are the biggest continents. So there's tons of data, tons of things all over the world, which is wonderful. But with Scratch Junior, the activity is a child in front of an iPad. And sure, it meets the requirements of coding becomes a literacy, but not necessarily coding becomes a playground. Not fully a playground, because at the playground we go with other kids. We don't just go alone to the playground. And so what I'm going to show you right now is an example of kinds of projects that we're trying to do where we have multiple tablets and multiple kids collaborating on a single project on a tablet. And so this is one of my favorite projects. So what you saw there is multiple tablets to celebrate a theme, right? And if you are interested in learning more about Scratch Junior, you want to download it. It works on different platforms, iOS, Android, Chromebooks. So here's the website, and I invite all of you to play and learn with it. We have lots of resources. We have curriculum. We're also in June going to launch some coding cards to help people that want to use it maybe for 15, 20 minutes as opposed to fully developed curriculum. So I invite you to go and visit. However, this notion of coding as a playground, you know, in Scratch Junior is there, but it's not really there. If we think of all the activities that children do in a playground, you know, some of them are missing, especially when we look at the open-endedness and the ability to collaborate and the ability to run around and to use the body to learn things. Of course, playgrounds, we know, are wonderful places for development. We see everything. I joke with my students that all domains of development can be observed in a playground. Children interact, create, imagine, learn from conflicts, talk to each other, and they do it on their own. Usually the parents are sitting on the benches observing what happens. And if we contrast this metaphor of the playground with this one of the playpen is so much more limited. In the playpen, children are stuck. You know, there's less creativity, less imagination, less collaboration, less of everything. However, playpens are safe. If I need to go cook, I can leave my child in the playpen and I come back in 10 minutes and I know I'll find the child there. But when you're thinking about technologies for learning, we don't want technologies that are safe but limited, like a playpen. We want technologies that engage children's imagination, creative interactions. So we want technologies that provide opportunities, developmental opportunities similar to the playground. And unfortunately, many of the technologies we see today for early childhood are more playpens. So there are adults in charge of giving the tools to kids, and they're used 1 or 2 times, maybe to reinforce or teach a particular skill, but they're not really about creativity, open-endedness, collaboration. So in my group, we feel very strongly that if we are going to have technologies in early childhood, those technologies should provide opportunities and experience similar to the playground. And this is important because today I'm going to be talking to you about Scratch Junior and Kibo. But as new technologies get developed, you know, how do we know which ones to incorporate? And maybe I said, you know, pass them to the playground playpen test, because playground and playpens can serve as metaphors to guide us in choosing which technologies we can bring. So Kibo was really designed with this playground metaphor in our heads. And there are no screens, there are no keyboards. And the way you program is stringing together wooden blocks. The wooden blocks have different commands, and the Kibo has different sensors, light sensor, sound sensor, distance sensor, also has a light bulb that turns on and off, and it has a scanner to read the commands. So here's your full programming language of 21 blocks and some parameters. And Kibo also has a lot of art platforms and also platforms that link to Lego. So at the end of the day, a Kibo project is a project that includes children's creativity and children's imagination. And again, we started designing Kibo in 2014 through a generous grant from NSF. And later on, we were able to commercialize the technology. So let me show you how it works. I'm going to have the expert, the 5-year-old, show you how you program Kibo.
I'm going to say begin, beep, go forward, then we're going to be like to the right, no, to the left, left, right, left.
The robot was programmed by this tablet. And again, the notion is a sequence. There's a sequence of commands, just like in Scratch Junior, but this sequence is made of tiny wooden blocks. So how do we teach Kibo to children, and how do we teach to adults who are going to be teaching children? Well, we basically teach in the same way. on the floor with art materials through engaging children in creating and adults in creating fun projects. So if you want to learn more about or you're interested, we have a 1-year early childhood technology certificate at Tufts University. I invite you to go and take a look if you're interested in this. We also have a 1 or 2 days professional development during the summer, and you still have some openings, so you can sign up. And this is an online early childhood blended certificate programs if you're interested to learn more about that. But I want to show you some examples of how we integrate the use of Kibo into the classroom. And so the idea is that we don't have a separate computer science classroom. We actually integrate in what they're doing. And one of the things they're doing is they're reading. And there's a lot of work with literacy. So one of the common experiences is they read a book, and then instead of making a drawing or creating a play about the book, they actually create a robotic play. So you see here this very hungry caterpillar going through the different foods and eating. And in order to program that, children needed to, first understand the book, but also understand math and do some calculations and predictions. Then we do a lot of work with geometry in honor of Seymour Papert, my mentor, and of Logos, which was really about creating geometry and understanding math, where you can attach different extensions with markers and have Kibo draw different shapes and draw many things. And we integrate with geometry art. So this is a math class. And what's more important for us is to start understanding the notion of a sequence and an algorithm. And how do we teach that? We never do what I'm doing, talking to kids. We engage them in an activity, and our first activity tends to be, we give them the little task to program Kibo to dance the hokey pokey. The hokey pokey is a very structured activity. First I do this, then I do that, then I do that. And so children usually respond.
You put your robot in, you put your robot out, you put your robot in, and shake it all down. You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about.
So that's one of our first computer science classes and activities, where children create a sequence of commands for Kibo to dance the hokey pokey, and they tend to dance alongside, just like in a playground. And this gave origin to one of my favorite curriculums that we have developed. In my lab, we have over 20 curriculum units for how to use Kibo, integrated into different areas. But my favorite one is the dances around the world, which integrates social science, geography, dances, movement, art. And so we ask children to research a particular area or region of the world, to interview people from there, to understand what their dances are, how they're dressed, and then we ask them to create a little bit of a dance. So we have some examples. Some salsa. We have also some group dances. So what you saw there were little coffee filters as skirts, and what I showed you was the take number 10. They were very nice and neat, but take number 1, all these robots were crashing with each other because kids needed to work in teams and needed to estimate and calculate and predict and use different sensors to understand how not to crash into each other. So Kibo is in 52 countries right now. We are extremely excited. We launched a company that's called KinderLab Robotics that distributes these Kibos and makes the Kibos. So they really came out of a research lab and are made available right now. So anyone can get them if they want. And there's one particular country that has been doing very interesting work, and that country is Singapore. You see right there the Minister of Education of Singapore on the floor learning about a project done by some of these kids. So in 2015, I got a call from the government of Singapore that they were working on a project called Smart Nations. And they realized that if they wanted to have a smart nation, a smart meaning bringing a high-tech nation, it wasn't just about creating high-tech highways and high-tech cars and high-tech anything. It was about helping educate children, the very young children, to be able to use and operate and create that world of the future. and they really believed that we need to start in early childhood. And so we started a collaborative project where we train all of the teachers and we engage in a research project. And I want to show you here a little example of how these dances around the world happen in Singapore.
Our Kibo will do the ribbon dance. Our Kibo comes from China. This is our program for our Kibo. Begin, repeat 4 times. Forward, spin, turn right, backward. And repeat the scan this 3 times, then stand.
So like you saw there is the child was following the program. The child had learned how to document his program. So documentation is very important. So they wrote down the commands, and you saw the parents clapping. For us, like in literacy, after you program, you created something that you want to share with others. And that's why we always invite community members or parents or families so kids can show off their projects. So with that, I'm going to show you a few examples in different countries. In Denmark, Kibo was extensively used in the context of a makerspace in a Lego affiliate school, so how it was integrated. Similar things have happened in libraries when they integrate Kibo in makerspaces in libraries. And then in Panama, there's a wonderful school that focuses on children with severe autism. And so as a collaboration with people from different countries in Europe and Panama, we did an intervention to see if children in the autism spectrum disorder could be using Kibo not only as a cognitive intervention, but also as a social intervention. And again, we have a paper that just got published. If people are interested, it's linked from my website as well. And we have videos also if people are interested. I'm happy to share with you. This is a very promising research area. We are not experts on autism, and we're happy with to look at partnerships and people understand. And then my country originally, Argentina. So it's very, very excited, and the Ministry of Education of the city of Buenos Aires, which is the capital, is putting Kibo into every single kindergarten classroom, and we're talking about 400 schools with multiple kindergarten classrooms, and they translated all of the materials. We really focus on thinking, pensamiento computacional, computational thinking, not just coding. And we've done a lot of training and going back and forth, and hopefully we'll also be able to document and do a study. And finally, another example that I want to share with you is Kibo in Spain, in Tenerife. I just got back from there. We did a collaboration with even younger kids, 3 and 4 years old and 5-year-olds. And what they did here is they recreated all the dances of the Canary Islands. Tenerife is in the Canary Islands, one of the islands in Spain, and it was a wonderful project, and we're just finishing up the paper. So those are all different examples of how Kibo has been used, but they all have in common that they engage children in learning through a design process. And this design process starts by asking a question: how can I make a Kibo dance? How can I make a Kibo draw a triangle? How can I make a Kibo be an animal? I imagine a solution, I make a plan, I create a prototype and test and improve my prototype. I share with others. We saw the parents clapping. And then after sharing, I have new questions. So this is an iterative design process. And some of you might say, well, that's wonderful, but we don't really have time to bring engineering and computer science into our classrooms. So I'm going to give you some time to look at this and try to make a guess to what process is this, because this is also an iterative process. And yes, this is the scientific method where we ask questions, we do background research, we construct our hypotheses, we experiment, we analyze results and draw conclusions, and then we report our results, and then we have new questions, and it keeps going. And so, yes, it aligns with the, this approach to learning definitely aligns with the scientific method. And we've heard and we work with in early childhood settings where they say, really, we don't have time to go into science. But then the question is, do you do this? And this is the writing method, right? The writing process. So we ask also questions with the background research. We make a draft, we revise our draft, we edit the draft, and then we publish either a paper or we publish a little story. So every time we're asking children to engage in a process, there is the opportunity to bring coding and to bring this understanding of coding as a literacy and coding as a playground into their learning experience. I'm sure if you're an artist or if you're in business side, you also engage of similar cyclical iterative process, and you could see the connections. Besides that, doing the interactive design process, there are very concrete, powerful ideas from the field of computer science that we engage young children to think about. And I will not go into detail into all of them, but if anyone is interested, I suggest that you look into my recent book, which is Coding as a Playground, and you can get examples exactly how do we engage children in learning about algorithms, modularization, control structures, representation, design process, debugging, hardware and software in a developmentally appropriate way. So you can learn more in that book. So all of this is wonderful. However, how do we bring it into the classroom? How do we bring it into a library? How do we bring it into my space, whatever that space is where I meet children? The technologies are not the answer. The answer is the framework of how I'm going to include and incorporate the technologies. And so I want to briefly share with you the framework that I have developed and we use in my research group and we use in all the research projects and collaborations we engage in. And this is called Positive Technological Development Framework. It's very inspired by the activities that happen in the playground. And basically, we strongly believe, and we have data to show it, that children that are going to be using technologies in positive ways, in ways to contribute to their own growth and their own learning and their own participation and contribution to society, are children who use technologies to engage in content creation, children who do it in a creative way, children who can collaborate through the use of technologies, children who can engage in communication through technologies or with technologies, and children who will build community through the use of these technologies, and children who will make choices of conduct, children who will be in a position just like in the playground where they have to decide, do I push this kid out of the slide because I'm going to go fast, or do I wait my turn, right? Just like in the playground where we are faced with choices, same thing with technology. Every time we use technology, we have a choice. So this PTD framework is what guides our approach to how we introduce technologies into the learning environment and also how to evaluate those technologies. I'm not going to go again into all the detail. There's a lot more in my book. There's a lot also in our website. We have developed a game with cards to help teachers and to help people think about that. And we also have evaluation and assessments for this PTD framework. So something that we've not been noticing is that, you know, when children, if we really take seriously the idea of coding as a literacy, well, we know, all of us, we know that literacy starts at home with the family, not when we start school. And so we've taken seriously that model, and we are doing right now a research project where we're looking at how families who engage in coding together learn and what kinds of roles happen. So we are looking at right now at a comparison study between the impact of graphical interfaces such as Scratch Junior versus tangible interfaces such as Kibo on children's learning outcomes and different family roles. And we have developed a protocol. So if anyone is in a situation where they want to run a 2-hour family coding event, please get in touch. We'll be happy to provide you with a protocol. It's easy, it's fun, and you could run one of these events and then we collect the data. But for now, what is very interesting is that so far we've seen that there is a significant increase in both children and adults coding interest after they attended both Kibo and Scratch Junior family coding days, and that they report very collaborative and child-directed activities as opposed to adult-directed activities. So that means children are in charge and they're not just watching the parents, and they're working together with their parents. So there's a lot of promising research questions and research directions that go from there. So in our DevTech research lab, what we really do is we engage in, we do research, we develop technologies, so they're out there. We also write books, and we have professional development and a certificate program and research papers, because really we're trying to get this idea of how coding can be a developmental playground out there. And so we pretty much figured out how to do it, how to do a lot of outreach. But I became, in the last year or so, after observing a lot of children, very, very interested in understanding, going back to basic data and understanding what happens in the brain when kids program. What's going on? So if coding is really a literacy, would the language brain regions also activate while programming? And we know there are different regions for that. So we engage in a brand new NSF project together with my co-PI Fedorenko at MIT, she's a neuroscientist, where we are trying to look at the cognitive and neural mechanisms of computer programming in young children to see if the language area gets activated. We know that problem-solving area definitely gets activated, and we are using fMRI scans of children programming with Scratch Junior were on the fMRI scan, and all of that is, just brand new data, and we're collecting, and hopefully, in 6 to 8 months, we'll have an answer for you. So I think we got now to the question section.
Great, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. We've had a few questions come in so far. Hopefully some more will come in as we start to kick this off. But one that we wanted to start out with was, do you know or do you plan to look into whether children who use Kibo and Scratch Junior continue to express interest in coding in the longer term?
Yeah, so that's a question, and right now, because of the nature of grants and the nature of what we know what to do, we are not really experts on longitudinal data. We don't know how to do that. So we are definitely interested and very open about engaging in collaborations to how to do that. Also, the nature of our grants are, 3-year grants, and there's not enough, it's a different type of grant, but that's something that I think is very, very important. And now that these tools are widely available, we can start doing that, and again, trying to find partners to do that.
Great, thank you. Someone just asked, what do you know about grants or funds available to support this in pre-K classrooms or in early childhood education broadly?
Yeah, so I know that, for example, right now, Google has a call, and in general, there are actually, if you go to KinderLab Robotics, which is the company that makes Kibo, they have a section on that where you can find grants for early childhood educators. And I believe there's a lot out there. It's just because right now coding is a hot topic, and there's a lot of opportunities. Lego Household has a set of grants, but again, KinderLab has active links to those links.
Okay, great. And kind of a follow-up on that one, someone wants to know, you mentioned the program you all have at Tufts, but what other types of professional development opportunities exist for educators who are looking to incorporate more coding or STEM work into their classrooms?
Well, so I know, for example, I only know, about the work we do, of course. We're at Tufts, and we believe, we are one of the only, one of the only places in the US, and I think in the world, that really focuses on early childhood and coding with this approach. There are other places that look at technological literacy, and you'll have others. So it's a little bit different, and that's something to be, technological literacy might mean everything from learning how to use an app or Word or a game. So we focus on a particular subset of that technological literacy, which is learning how to code, learning how to program, learning how to engage in robotics. So, I can tell you what we have at Tufts, and I'm sure you can do searches and find other things. What you will find is things that focus on technological literacy broader, not specifically on coding.
Okay, great, thank you. This is an interesting question that just came in. Someone asked, do you attempt to measure computational thinking, and if so, how?
Well, that's a great question, and that's hot. So there are right now active calls for research proposals for NSF exactly about that. First, what is computational thinking? There's not agreement on the field about if computational thinking is really a subset. How is it different from mathematical thinking? So before we can measure, we really need to define it. And right now, it's in the middle of, this is a brand new discipline compared to other disciplines, compared to traditional developmental science. And just the construct of computational thinking needs to be worked out. So right now, a couple of my students have developed different assessments. One of them is called Tactic. The issue with measuring computational thinking is, are we measuring it in relationship to a particular tool with a particular programming environment, or are we measuring it separate from that? So right now, as a side note, I'm working on a project with the local Boston-based WGBH, which is the PBS, where we are creating a series of animated characters that's called Monkeying Around. It's a TV show that's going to air in 2 years, where these monkeys engage in different forms of computational thinking. And so we are trying to develop assessments that do not involve programming to measure if after watching the show, children really have changed in their computational thinking. But again, this is a brand hot topic area. It's not clear because I think the concept is not clear yet.
Great, thank you. Another question we just got says, with the vital function of self-regulation in early elementary school, how does the level of self-regulation differ between children exposed to computer coding and those who are not? Do you know what some of the longitudinal effects on this technological approach to coding and play are?
Yeah, so again, we have to remember it's a brand new field. So 4 years ago, all of these technologies that I described did not exist, and there was no way to do that research, right? So right now, the issue of executive function, first, longitudinally, I don't know, but all of those are great questions, research questions that we should be engaging on. What we've seen anecdotally is that because we know that coding engages in executive function, it has been used in classrooms as a way to promote and to support work happening around executive functions. We actually wrote a grant that was denied by NSF to exactly conduct a study to look at executive function and coding. We didn't get the grant, but again, this is a very, very interesting area, and we do not have data yet. And again, these are all wonderful areas for people engaged in developmental science to start working on, because this is where it's happening. This is the kinds of things that children of the future, children, of the next century are going to be engaging with, and we need to be doing that research.
Great, thank you. This is an interesting question about your own background in robotics, which is, when were you first exposed to robotics, and what was the first robot you used?
But that's a great question. So I myself, my first exposure was not with robotics, but with Logo. So I grew up in Argentina, and in the early 80s, again, Logo which is the programming language of the turtle, the programming language that Seymour Papert developed, that had a robot component. But what made it to Argentina wasn't the robot component, it was only the screen base. And IBM brought it as a free activity for kids, because they wanted to test if really young kids, and young at the time was 7 or 8, could program. And so my parents signed me up, and that's how I took my first programming class with Logo and created, I remember my first project, it was a little house with a sun and a little character walking from the house to the sun and back, and that took me probably 8 weeks to work on. And little that I knew that, so many years later, I would be actually studying and be mentored by Seymour Papert, who was the creator of Logo. Then when I came years later, when I came to MIT in the mid-90s, I created my first robot. And my first robot, I love dancing, as you could see from the project, was actually a couple of tango dancers that could dance. And the first robotic environment used was the Lego-based Mindstorms.
Great, thank you. One more question we just got in says, I've been attempting to learn coding as an adult, but it is often difficult for those of us who are not exposed to computational thinking early. Can the approach used with children be used with adults attempting to learn computational thinking?
Yes, and yes, and yes. Yes, that's exactly it. We actually, when we developed these technologies, we developed thinking about children and young children who cannot read or write. But what we observe is, for example, in the professional development we do with teachers, these kindergarten teachers do not want to be coders, are not trained to think those ways. And what we've seen over and over is that very quickly they're able to learn how to engage not just with the program itself, but with some of the ideas. You know, what is an algorithm? What is a right sequence? How do I create a structure so my algorithm gets into a pattern? And so definitely we've seen it over and over that adults who have had problems trying to learn a more sophisticated programming language and the syntax interferes, because the more sophisticated programming language, the more sophisticated the syntax. If you really play before with Scratch Junior or Kibo, you will understand the mechanics of programming and what does it mean, right? This what I call powerful ideas. What does it mean to create a module that can be reapplied in other parts of the code? What does it mean to create an algorithm? How do I go about debugging? How do I test? How do I fix my programs, which is a very important skill in programming. We know that things are not going to work. So the question is not, is it right or wrong? The question is it fixable? And some of those skills you can develop with some of these easier programming environments, such as Scratch Junior or Kibo or others.
Great, thank you. It looks like that is the last question we've had come in so far. I'm going to wait just a second and see if any more come in. I do want to let people know that a lot of resources regarding professional development and information sharing have been shared in the question box. So I'll be happy to send those around in the follow-up message, because I know there were several questions from people wanting to learn more about professional development and such.
So one last thing I want to share with you, because this is someone asked before about how do we assess computational thinking. And so one of the techniques we'll be using is very simple. So before children engage in one of these programming interventions, we ask them to tell us how many steps it takes when they brush their teeth. And so they would, and give us, what are the steps and how many. And so they would say, I go to the bathroom, I brush my teeth, and I go for breakfast. And usually, it's between 3 and 5 steps. And then we go through the coding and the experience and all the way they create a project. And at the end of the program or the end of the intervention, we ask them again the question. So how many steps does it take you to go to brush your teeth? And usually that list grew into 15 or 20 steps. Because what children, and this is an example of computational thinking. So children understand that you need to really break down a complex problem into very, very small parts, because that's what programming is all about. So they will say something like, I get out of bed and I put my right foot on and my left foot on and I take 10 steps and I get to the door and I open the toothbrush. And so you get the example. And so this is an example of how we see computational thinking operating without relationship to a particular programming environment.
Great, thank you. Here is a quick and easy question to finish off with, I think, which is if we have some participants who use Kibo in their classrooms, and there was a question that if they want to share, they're sharing on Twitter and on social media about using it, is there a hashtag that you use or follow closely for educators that use it in their classrooms?
Yeah, so I will get back to you. So mine is Marina Bers, and I just typed it there. And then I think the other one is Kibo Robot, but someone will need to check, and we will probably circulate it.
Okay. Great. Then I think it's about time for us to wrap up. I'm going to switch screens back real quick. Great. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. Especially thank you so much to our speaker for her very thought-provoking presentation. If you liked today's webinar, you may be interested in future consortium webinars. The next consortium webinar will be on May 23rd, and the topic will be looking at historic Hispanic families' access through multiple dimensions, findings from the National Research Center on Hispanic Children. You can see this slide for more information. And this webinar will be the final consortium webinar before we take a break for the summer, so we really hope you can join us. You can also join the consortium listserv to receive notifications about future webinars, a quarterly newsletter, as well as other job and event announcements. Like I mentioned, I will be sending out a follow-up email that will have a link to the recording of today's webinar, and it will also have links to all the videos that were included in the webinar today, additional resources, as well as the resources that everyone shared in the question box. So thank you so much for joining us, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day.